Okay, so I know everybody is wondering, how does he know what's coming out in the software? He's not a partner anymore. That's because the software includes the feature summary in the software help system. So it tells you exactly what's coming out in the new version. So if you've downloaded the new software or in the cloud on Epicor, you have access to this help system. If you're part of the early adoption or what used to be called the beta program, you have access to the software. This entails everything that's in the software. And I was talking with Christine before the meeting today. Something that I'm finding different these past 2 years is the what's new in the new software. I hate to say it, but everybody on the list that has been using Epicor more than 10 years remembers you would print up this list and you would take a week to read it because it was huge. That's not the case anymore. By Epicor maintaining this every 6-month cadence, the number of features that are being added into the software are getting smaller and more digestible and understandable. So this is something that you guys can definitely take a look at in the software when it comes out. Look through the feature set and say, hey, this applies to me. This works. I want to utilize this. Or, as I did, how is this going to impact me? Because there are some changes in 22.1, 12.1, or Kinetic 2. Not sure what they're going to call it. We'll find that out at Insights. But the major area that I found in the software is the user experience. They're trying to improve the user experience. There's a lot of focus to make the software work for my users more smoothly. I want them to be able to be more efficient at what they're doing. I want them to be able to work from their cell phone, from their tablet, from their PC at their workstation. All this is great and good. And post-COVID, everybody is working from different areas. So how do I get in, still have access to the software, but still have the experience be the same across multiple environments? So inside the software, they've added search chips. It's a context menu adding the ability to copy the selected records to the clipboard, kind of like you used to be able to do. Next one, the new UX enables much faster access to the information. Now they throw a few adjectives. It's modern, it's a clean layout, they simplified things. Okay, that's a perspective. It takes extra clicks in my book to get to data, and some people don't want to do that. They want to minimize the clicks for people to get to things. Being able to add common attachments like a PDF and an image. And how they listed this as a feature is a little beyond me because you can now open them in a browser. And we've always had the ability to open a PDF in Edge. I don't think Edge came out with a version that didn't offer that. Images automatically open in Edge. I believe Chrome does them as well. Depending on what web browser you're using, that can also be an issue. Added support for dragging and dropping multiple attachments into the tree nodes. This was an ability in the past. They finally added it to the new Kinetic 12 coming out. So if I want to add attachments at the page level, if I want to do it to a component or a different node in the tree, I can do that. This is kind of nice that I can turn around and hook this in with any other application studio items that are using that feature as well. And there's an on-file drop that was added and on-file dragging. So I can see when that's occurring. Grids now allow for export to Excel. And I know this is going to be a big hoo-ha for everybody because it was one of the major pitfalls in version 11 that people didn't like was, I can't get my data to Excel. My bookkeepers aren't going to be happy with Epicor. 5,000 records. This is your default. You can set the maximum to 20,000. It's going to be page-based because it's now web-based. It's no longer a grid that supports an unprecedented amount of records that I can put. I don't know if I'm going to say Hasa or Jose are going to know this off the top of their head, but I don't think the grid view object had a limit, or if it did, it was a very large limit. You do set this now because that's the web base. You don't want a user coming to a web page and sitting there for 3 minutes waiting for the data to download. So there are limits on what gets sent to the client or to the web page. So you can now control how much they can export out. If I go to the transaction history tracker in my GL, I'm not going to want to send all 50,000 records out to Excel. Or maybe I do. I'm just going to say, take it in chunks over to Excel. Don't try and do everything. And dashboard grids that converted from classic to the new UI, they have a full screen option in App Studio now that I can click full screen. It gives me a little bit larger of a view area. The date picker and token date controls, I can now specify you can't accidentally type in January 1st, 1922. It's got to be January 1st within this window of dates. So I can now set some date ranges and limit what dates are available to be entered into there. This, I think, is a great thing because I see it all the time where we have clairvoyants working in order entry that place orders into the year 3022 instead of 2022. It's a simple typo, but unfortunately in Epicor, you won't see that come up to the screen until that year occurs, because everything generally by default looks at from today or older. It doesn't look at every record. So by being able to put a limit around there is going to be helpful because we're going to minimize the number of errors that people can turn around and enter or put things into the wrong century. The CICE framework gets a major transformation here. And by major, I started out here, but then kept going with the framework. Then there's another slide deck on CICE framework. There's a whole lot of framework changes. And I'm going to say that's just because as they continue developing App Studio, they're learning more and more what they can do and putting more and more fixes into the software. BPM holds now link into this CICE framework. This was something I could put in Classic, but really didn't exist in the App Studio. Now it's going to be in the Kinetic framework as well. The personalized searches, predictive searches, and data tag searching. So the predictive search was the one I really liked here in the middle. Yeah, I can have a personalized search for specific for users, but the predictive search, this is what I'm going to say 90% of your employees are using. I want to start typing a part number. I want to start typing something, and then I want to see the drop down of what the options are and be able to select from that. This allows me the ability to do that with that predictive search, similar to like a Google search when I'm on a web browser. There is a new license mode being added to the software, and that's going to be for the CRM and time and expense capability. So right now you have the default user license, you have an MES user license, there's going to be a CRM and time and expense. There were a handful of different license types because they were sold at different price levels. So time and expense is going to be for the CRM and the time and expense people. That's not necessarily a warehouse handheld license or MES. So this was added to that CICE framework. BAQ zones, they added a replacement feature for the CICE BAQ zone. So I can start typing my BAQ name, and I can have a BAQ zone on the BAQ name that shows me what are all my BAQs that begin with this name. So instead of like I had the ability to put a BAQ zone on a part number, so when the user would start typing the part number, it would show me all the options that began with that combination of characters. Now I can do it on the CICE fields as well. So this is going to be really nice for the heavy hitting developers on the call here today, because you never had the ability to do that. You had to either click the search, go hunt for it, do the start set. It was a whole lot of clicks to get there. Now I can put zones on the CICE framework BAQs as well. Image columns that were used in classic dashboards were converted to the new UI. Support for available image lists into the new dashboards, and support for image view rules. So this got added for the Kinetic framework dashboards. The configurator added support for BOQ type dynamic criteria. There's a lot of dynamic with dynamic attributes, dynamic types. This got added also into 12. I think those are on following pages here. Kinetic also now supports translation. So, Yusuf, if you guys are in a different language over there in Norway, you can also turn around and now use the Kinetic translation utility for this. I don't know if they had a Norwegian translation, but hey, you can now also build that yourself. Financial report styles, being able to dump data over to Excel. Now that that's there, guess what? You can now do this back with the financial report style. Financial reports, the basic report designer in Classic, you would turn around and build it. When you ran the financial report designer, there was a button to export it over to Excel. That didn't exist in the first few versions of the Kinetic. Now it's out there so that you can send the results over to a spreadsheet. User settings got a little bit of an enhancement. Now access and update your global settings directly from the user security panel in Kinetic. I don't have to turn around and go to the different pieces one by one. I can now do a global settings panel. Clear the ECM account cache. So if I have ECM in use, I can go clear that cache, kind of like clearing the trace or starting a trace for a client from user maintenance. I can now do this with the ECM account cache as well. Adding a settings icon to the application page overflow menu. So when you select that icon, the panel slides out. You can define the updates, the deletes, what to do for settings for the application. So you'll see the little gear sprocket a little bit more often on the Kinetic screens. The Kinetic BAQ designer is now available in the preview mode that allows Kinetic customers familiar with this to do also in the web design. Updatable BAQs are still a limit. External BAQs are still a limit, and advanced group by editors are still a limit inside the Kinetic. So if you're using any of these, I would say you're still stuck in the Classic portion. Next one, the Kinetic BAQ designers are coming, they're saying in later releases. Putting that in the feature summary is kind of pointless. It's like saying, hey, and we're going to have a president forecasting tool added to the software. Yeah, I don't see that coming either. But yeah, we know they're going to be adding more features to this because it's still forcing the use of the Classic framework for this. They even have it right in the feature summary. Recommend you still build these in the Classic designer. They're still working on trying to get this fixed. So this is going to be the major framework for the CICE framework transformations that are coming. Next one is going to be enhanced browser security and data sharing. So using the standard browser navigation so I can go backward and forward between records, the refresh, the history, even just sharing the URL and sending that to somebody. Hey, here's the link to this record inside Epicor. If the person's logged in and they have access to it, they should be able to open that link, kind of like in the Classic, where you go to File, and it was, I think, Send or Share, and then you could send the record or the workflow by email. That's now in there as well so that we can share this and move it. Users navigating through the MetaFX application, the URL dynamically updates, including the page. The current record's in there, the breadcrumb, all that stuff is in there now. A share option was added so that, hey, on the main ones, we can turn around and share those like we did in Classic. If you've noticed, a lot of the things that I'm mentioning is, hey, we're finally adding this Classic feature up to Kinetic. We're adding this Classic feature up to Kinetic. This does seem to be a heavy trend of what's going on in the new version that's coming out. So I would say Epicor heard our complaints and said, hey, we want this functionality that we've had brought forward. And that seems to be the bulk of what I saw here in the new features in 22. The tooltip property, I believe Hannah was the one looking for this in Application Studio. They have it listed here as a new feature, but on her enhancement request on ideas, it didn't say it was added or accepted yet. So I'm not 100% sure if this was added or not. Decimal support for the time picker. So I can turn around, instead of having to do hours and minutes, I can do fractionals. Some people prefer to use that instead of the hours and minutes. So this is now supported for the time picker utility. The control for the App Studio, the time picker only allowed for hours and minutes before. It now handles both. You can view information about the component, the event, the properties, more understand how to build the customizations with Kinetic. So those tooltips are going to come in definitely handy when you're trying to use the Application Studio. I can hover over the item and see what's going on here and have more tooltips pop up to say, hey, this is why I modified this. Or on this tool, I turn around and put these attributes. You can put that inside the tooltip, so kind of a breadcrumb to remind yourself why you did that. Leaving breadcrumbs throughout App Studio, I have learned has saved my butt an awful lot. So I'm just going to say this out to people. Use the comment description field. Go ahead, use the tooltips. Put as much information as you can to try and remember why you did stuff. This is pretty much the first version that people are coming out and learning to develop. Leave yourself the breadcrumbs and the trails so that when you have to go back and repair this, or hey, Epicor upgraded the feature, we can now do this to it. When you go back and look at that customization that you wrote, you can see why you did things. So definitely leave yourself the breadcrumbs. Retrieving the default search options for a table. So I can turn around and have default endpoint results for table names. When I search for a specific table, the system returns that default search term. You can quickly locate the names of tables that you want for reports, for queries, much easier and much quicker this way. Next one is itemized invoice for field service jobs. I would normally do a poll here, but we didn't prep for this, but I would say anybody using field service in the software, this is going to come into an impact for them because I know a lot of people complained about not having itemized invoices for the work that was done on their field service jobs. So a lot of this was added into the software now in 22.1 coming out the end of the month. I probably should have thrown up the safe harbor, but I didn't, but it is subject to change so that what they roll out here at the end of the month could be different than what's in the feature summary right now. But seeing as how we're 2 weeks away, I'm going to say it's not going to change too much from there. Planning the bill of material capability. If you're using capability scheduling for the bill of materials or for the bill of materials looking at capabilities, creating a part article and locating the concept of planning for the BOM is under the entering global part details topic now, or the general part details topic. I can set it to a planning BOM for planning combinations of, hey, when does this material? When's this job need this to be able to add to the method of manufacture? So I can look at this capability planning also with the materials, not just with the operations. So MRP will have a little bit of a fix here coming for it. Reusing dynamic attributes, as I mentioned earlier, and duplicating the attribute class. So if I turn around and create a dynamic attribute, if I want to copy that or duplicate it to another area, I can do that and keep it with the original record. I know dynamic attributes were a big push for 11.1 and 11.2. I want to say they kind of started in 10.2.700. We'll see also a lot more table changes allowing for these dynamic attributes and enhancing this area of the software. There were a lot of table changes regarding this. Recipe authoring. So if I have a recipe for making something, it's a little bit more complex than a standard method of manufacturing where I have, these are my operations, these are the materials that go in. Now I can put more information into that recipe and that authoring and controlling how this is built, either by product or putting in the ingredients and the relationships between them. So this is kind of important if you're going to be doing any recipe. A lot of manufacturers I know, they're going to be doing the standard, this is my method of manufacturing, here are my materials. Go ahead, these materials link to these operations. I can now turn around and have more information added into there. Next one, the configurator management. Heather, I think I saw you in the attendees list here earlier. I know we were looking at having configurator as a topic here. That ended up getting rescheduled. But the configurator management is now deploying the EWC configurator, which is a little bit more lightweight than the other one, but this is all based on the KB Max. The use of production mode is now recommended when you're using the configurator. When am I able to use this configuration versus is it still in development? Is it still being tested? The KB Max software is being rebranded. I'll go ahead and try and hit the button here, as CPQ. So the CPQ is the name of the new KB Max software. This will apply to sales orders, jobs. They didn't say that it applies to quotes, but since it applied to quotes also in the past, I'm going to say the same thing holds true moving forward. It is a SaaS platform outside of Epicor ERP. They're working to fold this into the software. And they did even have a notice here. The KB Max reference is now being renamed to CPQ. So when you're walking around at Insights, this is a sign that you're going to be looking for overhead as CPQ, not KB Max. Another thing that they're doing is automating order fulfillment. Now, inside Kinetic, I can turn around and schedule functions to execute at standard times. This is one of the features that was added to the new Kinetic world. Being able to do this, I have a lot of clients that I know use the order fulfillment workbench to turn around and say, hey, any orders ordered by 10 o'clock in the morning, if they're able to fulfill up to 100%, can we turn around and just auto-fulfill them and release them for picking? And then at 12 o'clock, we do the same thing. Then at 2 o'clock, and then maybe at 3 o'clock, we know any orders there, we can get out the door. So I can now schedule these automated fulfillments to actually run and do the allocations. And I have a question here. Can we go back to the recipe slide and expand on that? What is it used for? So if I'm, just as it sounds, if I'm a cookie manufacturer, what's my recipe? It's not just flour, milk, putting my chocolate chips in there, adding some sugar. I can turn around and put, hey, start the oven, get it going. Turn around and soften the morsels, soften the butter. These are additional steps into that operational routing. I'm not really using the butter while I'm softening it, making cookies, but hey, I got to turn around and do that step. Otherwise, it's not going to be ready when that operation is needed. So I can put these operations inside the recipe so that, yes, I do have to turn around and do them, otherwise it's not going to come out correctly. So recipe authoring is going to be kind of exactly that. What products, what materials, what ingredients, how do they tie in? What are the relationships between non-material or versus material resources? The labor and the equipment for them. Did that answer your question there, Michelle? Thank you, Fred. I just got to the unmute Michelle. So Michelle,
Michelle, you're unmuted.
Okay, thank you. Is this an extra module that you have to add, or is it named something different? We're on.
I'm going to say this is,
but
you're on 21.2?
correct.
I'm going to say this is going to be a separate module or feature that needs to be added. I'm going to say this is not going to be in the core software for production.
Okay, so if I'm understanding, it's kind of like expounding on methods of manufacturing?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Same thing on the AP invoice, the getting the late costs automation. If anybody is using that currently right now, you have the option to automatically transfer all the late costs related to a container shipment or a purchase receipt to that AP invoice, removing the additional manual work that you had to do, go ahead and adding that to the invoice. Now this gets automated. So if I turn around and get a duty or a tax bill afterwards, I can add those late costs on that AP invoice and turn around and share them over. So this will be a new enhancement to the get late cost function that it already exists right now. It just didn't go all the way. So this will automatically transfer those late costs related to it now. Dynamic documents. Just turning around creating the business workflows. So when I have a document that comes in, what do I have to do with this? So this is going to be part of that document management, DocStar workflows. How do I turn around and handle this? And having the ability to kind of automatically convert those PDFs into the system so that I can read them, and then the forms are available for that data entry. The other one is local file attachments. Kinetic is browser-based, but you have the files located on your internal servers still, but maybe your Epicor server's up in the cloud. Well, how do I get the two to talk and work together? Because I have to be connected to both networks to be able to get to the URL that was linked to the document inside Epicor. So the restores the local file attachment function that used to be in Classic. So when you went into company maintenance, there was a tab for the document management. Did you want the file copied by FTP? Did you want it replicated up to the Epicor share? And then Epicor would say, oh, this is a job document. We'll put it in the job folder. This is order. We'll put it in the order folder. That functionality kind of didn't exist when Kinetic came out because Kinetic is cloud-based. It's on the server. That server is not always in your building, so copying those files up to that area couldn't be done. But I still wanted to store that link, that URL path, and that UNC path to where the files on my local network, I need to have access to that. That is now supported also in the Kinetic. Dynamic reports. Tax validation can contain different criteria for determining what displays when that report pops up. So having the ability to create these dynamic reports and then set a criteria that follows with them. And I do know in the App Studio, there is a tutorial video, I want to say, on ERP videos or how to turn around and customize the reports so that when the screen pops up, I can say if this checkbox is checked, then hide these or gray these out. So I can turn around and specify the filters. I can turn around and control what's going on based on the user interaction with the reports. This makes them a little more dynamic while moving forward. Requiring a submission ID and allowing multiple submits. These checkboxes were added for like the electronic report card and the report style maintenance. So we're going to see some enhancements for these dynamic reports. I still find the SSRS reports run faster than going through the Epicor print engine, even in the Kinetic Studio. So we're finding that the SSRS reports that are written as true SSRS actually perform faster in the Kinetic environment because I can just turn around, call the URL, and have the report pop up within seconds rather than waiting for the engine to run. But overall, it ensures a standard way of printing a set of reports for people. The biggest kick, and I know Hasso's going to chime in on this, and so's Jose, is the whole .NET 6 migration. Kinetic, in my book, is pushing people towards a cloud-based solution, making it back to a server model where everything runs on the server and nothing's really done on the client. The .NET 6 is the runtime for the server-side processing. This is a major upgrade to the software. It also allows the enhancements of a little bit because now I can turn around. I don't have to run everything on a Windows server. I could turn around and run this on a Linux server. I can run it in the Apache. I can run it on a Mac server. So when Epicor kind of went to this whole Microsoft stack, you have to have a Microsoft server with SQL and all this stuff, the web application itself is moving to .NET 6, which says it doesn't have to be running on a Microsoft IIS server anymore. The Windows Communication Foundation, the ASP.NET required IIS pretty much, or there was a plugin, I believe, for ASP.NET over to Linux for Apache, but you couldn't really get the software to function. By having the .NET 6 migration, this is going to open it up so that we can now run Epicor on more than just Windows. It is going to impact only the on-premise customers because you now need to upgrade your systems. You have to have the latest info, but if you're in the cloud, you're most likely going to be there if you're in Epicor Cloud or a cloud that's being maintained and updated. The changes going to .NET 6, I haven't read anybody that's posted comments saying this is a bad move. Mostly everything's been on the positive that this is a good forward movement. I'm going to actually throw that out to the other developers on this call and say, hey, send me your feedback if you have thoughts otherwise of where this is going. But having the ability to run across other platforms, not just Windows, now I can go back to Linux or Mac or Unix systems. So it's going to open the world back up to this. And Monty has a question here. Are the first two bullets under dynamic reports for just restoring what we already had in WinForms? Pretty much. These are the case of, hey, we're moving these dynamic reports. This is what you had in Classic. This is what we need to be able to do moving forward into Kinetic and getting this into the Kinetic model. Matthew's asking if our CodaBears quick print update is needed for .NET 6. I'm going to throw that one out over to Fred since I'm not exactly 100% sure what all's running through the quick print code in the background.
Yeah, Matt, there will be an update. We're working on that to get it fixed up.
But this will be a big jump for a lot of people because this now is moving everything back pretty much to run back on the server.
Calvin, we also have Yusuf has his hand raised.
Got it. Sorry, missed that.
Nope, I did too. Yusuf, you should be unmuted
Yep.
now if you want to.
Yep. If you just can go back to a slide where about the report styles. So, yep. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Go ahead.
Right. So here, the second point where you're saying that a report is when we create a report style, we can create a new form out of that.
Correct. So you can create a new form for that report and then attach that to the system using menu maintenance. Kind of like when you add a kinetic and then you can choose, I want to say you have to click the customization button and then you can select what layer you want to attach. This would be same for the dynamic report. You would turn around and add the report to it and then add that to menu maintenance and specify what you want changed or what layer you want rolled there.
But this was not available in Epicode 10, I guess.
Correct.
Right? Yep. Okay. So we have a multiple format for purchase order. So in case like if I want to have a draft purchase order and one is approved purchase order, so for the draft, I can create a new menu and ask user to print it from there, and which will only print the draft purchase orders.
Correct. Or you would have a different report style in Classic.
Okay, that's a nice feature. And the one question I have on that recipe authorization. So this is more for the now like process manufacturing.
Correct.
Right. So now because earlier like I think so Epicor was not supporting to the process manufacturing, but now using recipe I can develop a solution for the process manufacturing as well.
Correct.
All right. Okay. That's all right. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, and Phil Jenkins has a comment here also that you need to have .NET framework installed on the workstation as well. Yes, you will need to apply it to the workstation as well as on the server so that this can run. That is going to be a requirement for 22.1. Correct. And support was saying it doesn't mean they won't work. It just also, this means all customizations are compiled server side. Yes, everything is going towards the server side, not the client. Which for those of us that have gray hair from the 80s, this is back to the mainframe days where the server did all the work, the client just rendered the info. Okay, the next thing, if you are using CSF outside of the US, and use it because you're on the call, I'm pointing finger at you because you're outside the US, periodic average costing. Now, I don't think you're in China, Taiwan, or any of the Asian Pacific countries, but this is now available there, that we can have periodic average costing as an option, but you do have to have the pack license installed to use this new feature. Also in the EU and in Asia, and I'm going to say Australia too, and I'm going to throw that probably at Christine, but the intrastat reporting. First it was shipment entry. If it wasn't found, then it went to the part maintenance. I'm still stuck on the, is this required in Australia? I don't know if they do intrastat over there. I know that we have worked with people in Europe that have to use it in Germany and throughout the EU, but enhancing that intrastat reporting, I can choose the country of origin when I select in that shipment. Is it coming from shipment entry or is it coming from part maintenance? If it's not found, then default it from the other. This didn't really exist in the past. That's being added moving forward. Now, this is only going to really apply. Intrastat reporting is done outside of our country of the US, and periodic average costing is only done in Asia, APAC markets. So while they're new features, they're not going to really apply to us here. But if we have sister companies or we're in more than one locale, this will apply for them. And I'm all of about 5 minutes early here. Do we have any questions on the new features coming out in 22?
If not, it means we get a longer lunch.
I'm not going to argue.
Also, if you've got questions for Stump the Chump, you can go ahead and put those into the questions as well. If you want to just prefix them like STC, then I know I got to pull them off and put them onto those slides. I'm not seeing anybody typing, so you might be off the hook, Calvin.
Awesome. Like, there's generally not a lot of questions because I realize this is early view of what's coming out in a couple of weeks. It's not until we actually see the release made public for everyone that then we truly know what's coming out in the software. This is still just a forecasted look of what's out in the cloud right now. And I will update my slide deck because this one also says Stump the Chump.
Okay, if there's no other questions, let's go ahead and break for lunch, and we will resume at 12:30 with how to do test environments.